day, beautiful people, and welcome back to Life Treasures and Golden Moments. This is Natalie Silver. I hope everyone's doing well out there today and enjoying this beautiful spring weather. Today, I'd like to share 2 short stories with you that I know that will give you food for thought and touch your heart. The first story was written by Rebecca Manley Pippert, and it's called Lessons from a Young Nurse. In an article in Campus Life, a young nurse writes of her pilgrimage in learning to see in a patient the image of God beneath a very distressing disguise. Eileen was one of her first patients, a person who totally was helpless. A cerebral aneurysm, broken blood vessels in the brain, had left her with no conscious control over her body, the nurse writes. As near as the doctors could tell, Eileen was totally unconscious, unable to feel pain, and unaware of anything going on around her. It was the job of the hospital staff to turn her every hour to prevent bed sores and to feed her twice a day, what looked like a thin mush through a stomach tube. Caring for her was a thankless task. When it's this bad, an older student nurse told her, you have to detach yourself emotionally from this whole situation. As a result, more and more, she came to be treated as a thing, a vegetable. But the young student nurse decided that she could not treat this person like the others had treated her. She talked to Eileen, sang to her, encouraged her, and even brought her little gifts. One day, when things were especially difficult, and it would have been easy for the young nurse to take out her frustrations on the patient, she was especially kind. It was Thanksgiving Day, and the nurse said to the patient, I was in a cruddy mood this morning, Eileen, because it was supposed to be my day off, but now that I'm here, I'm glad. I wouldn't have wanted to miss seeing you on Thanksgiving Day. You know, this is Thanksgiving. Just then, the telephone rang, and as the nurse turned to answer it, she looked quickly back at the patient. Suddenly, she writes, Eileen was looking at me, crying. Big damp circles stained her pillow, and she was shaking all over. This was the only human emotion that Eileen ever showed any of them, but it was enough to change the whole attitude of the hospital staff toward her. Not long afterward, Eileen died. The young nurse closes her story saying, I keep thinking about her. It occurred to me that I owe her an awful lot. Except for Eileen, I might never have known what it's like to give myself to someone who can't give back. What a beautiful story, and what a reminder to all of us. If we look to life and to people through our eyes with love and compassion, we can accomplish so much and touch the lives of others. The next story is The Love of a Friend, and it's called In the Trenches, authored by Stu Weber. You've probably heard the powerful story coming out of the World War I of the deep friendship of 2 soldiers in the trenches. 2 buddies were serving together in the mud and the misery of the wrenched European stalemate. One version identifies them as actual brothers. Month after month, they lived out their lives in the trenches, in the cold and in the mud, under fire and under orders. From time to time, one side or the other would rise up and out of the trenches, fling their bodies against the opposing line, and slink back in to lick their wounds, bury their dead, and wait to do it all over again. In the process, friendships were forged in the misery. 2 soldiers became particularly close. Day after day, night after night, terror after terror, they talked of life, of families, of hopes of what they would do when and if they returned from this horror. On one more fruitless charge, Jim fell severely wounded. His friend Bill made it back to the relatively safe trenches. Meanwhile, Jim lay suffering beneath the night flares between the trenches alone. The shelling continued, and the danger was at its peak. Between the trenches there was no place to be. Still, Bill wished to reach his friend, to comfort him, to offer what encouragement only friends can offer. The officer in charge refused to let Bill leave the trench. It was simply too dangerous. As he turned his back, however, Bill went over the top, ignoring the smell of cordite in the air and the concussion of incoming rounds and the pounding in his chest. Bill made it to Jim. Some time later, he managed to get Jim back to the safety of the trenches. Too late. His friend was gone. The somewhat self-righteous officer, seeing Jim's body, cynically asked Bill if it had been worth the risk. Bill's response was without hesitation. "Yes, sir, it was," he said. "My friend's last words made it more than worth it. He looked up at me and he said, 'I knew you would come.'" The following is a short poem written by Mother Teresa and is called The Garment of Love. Love has a hem to her garment that reaches the very dust. It sweeps the streets and lanes, and because it can, it must. This is Natalie Silva with Life Treasures and Golden Moments. Thank you for listening today. Until next time, take care and God bless.